In this lesson, we're going to solve absolute value inequalities. Now, when we did this before, what we did was we set whatever was in the absolute value equal to the positive solution, then equal to the negative solution. But now that these are not equals anymore, they are inequalities, there's a little bit more that we have to remember. So what I would do here is I would do one of two ways. We're either going to write these as separate inequalities, which I don't prefer doing. I would say that x is less than 4, and because it's a less than, so that's how I remember it. If it's less than, it's less than. So this is an and question. So x is less than 4 and x is greater than negative 4. So not only do I have to change the sign, but I have to flip the inequality around. Now, when I have one that's a less than like this, instead of writing it as two separate inequalities, I write it as x is less than 4, and then over here I would have negative 4 is less than. So I would take this other term where x was the bigger number, so again it's open to x, and write it like this as a triple inequality. Negative 4 is less than x is less than 4, which tells me that the solution is between negative 4 and positive 4. That's why I prefer that as to writing it this way, which it's not as clear. Again, these are always less than every single time. Notice this is a little bit different because to begin with we have a greater than question, so I remember that as greater, so it's less than and greater. So here I'm going to say that x is greater than 4 or x is less than negative 4. Now if I were going to graph that, just so you can see what an or would look like, x would be greater than 4 or x would be less than negative 4. So quite often, probably 90% of the time, your or graphs will look like this with some sort of space in the middle. So let's take a look now that we're going to have a little bit more difficult. The first thing I do whenever I get a question is look at what direction this is pointing. But of course I'm going to isolate that first. So I have y minus 15 is less than 19. So now this is an and question because it was less than. So from here, to make it easier on myself, I'm going to write negative 19, because this was positive, is less than y minus 15 is less than 19. Now why was I able to take it out of the absolute value? Because I wrote it basically twice. The other option, of course, would be to write that y minus 15 is less than 19 and y minus 15 is greater than negative 19, and then solve each of those. This to me is easier. I'll add 15 to all three places, which gives me negative 4 is less than y is less than 34. And then if I were to graph this, it would be between negative 4 and positive 34. And that's why I prefer this way to doing it two different times. Now, they want me to write the solution set using set builder notation and interval notation, so I've just graphed it. The set notation would be all of the y's such that negative 4 is less than y is less than 34. Interval notation would be from negative 4 to positive 34, neither included because there's no or equal to. My next one, this is a greater. Again, it's a greater question. I would solve, because it's an or rather than an and, I actually do have to write it twice. So I have this is greater than 7, or I have that expression is less than or equal to negative 7. So remember when I wrote it the second time, I changed the sign and also flipped the inequality. That gives me w is greater than or equal to 3, or w is less than or equal to negative 11. On a graph, that tells me that from 3 it's closed, shaded to the right. At negative 11 it's closed, shaded to the left. So this is what my graph would look like. In interval notation, I would say from negative infinity to negative 11, union, 3 to infinity. And of course, set builder would just be all of the w's such that both of those things, this or this. Again, on this one, before I write it as two separate questions, I will divide by 5. That leaves me with 2w plus 1, still in the absolute value, is greater than or equal to 3. From here, I notice that this is a greater question, so I would write it as 2w plus 1 is greater than or equal to 3, or 2w plus 1 is less than or equal to negative 3, and then solve each one. That leaves me with w is greater than or equal to 1, or w is less than or equal to negative 2. Graphing that, at 1 would be a closed dot shaded right, at negative 2 would be a closed dot shaded left, and then of course in interval notation it would be negative infinity to negative 2, union 1 up to infinity. Whoa. Another one for us to try, again, before I write it as two separate entities, I would add the 8 to each side. So I actually have the absolute value of x plus 4 is less than 20. And then from here, this is an and. So I would say negative 20 is less than x plus 4 is less than positive 20, and solve from here by subtracting 4. So negative 24 is less than x is less than 16. In interval notation, that would be negative 24 up to 16. And of course, my graph would be shaded everything between negative 24 and 16 with two open circles. Two questions for you to try on your own, so try them both and press play to check your work. For the first, before I did anything else, I would add the 12 to each side. And again, notice I haven't taken it out of the absolute value yet because I haven't written it twice yet. Now this is a greater question, and so I would write x plus 9 is greater than or equal to 26, or x plus 9 is less than or equal to negative 26. Solve each. That leaves me with x is greater than or equal to 17, or x is less than or equal to negative 35. I don't have room to do a ton of stuff here, but of course my graph would be from 17 shaded to the right, from negative 35 shaded to the left. In interval notation, it would be from negative infinity to negative 35, union 17 up to infinity. On my second, before I did anything else, I would divide by 3. So 2x minus 5, absolute value is less than 7. This is an and question. On and questions, I always write them like this, and then solve. That leaves me with negative 1 is less than x is less than 6, which means the shading would occur, of course, between those two values on my graph. And the interval notation would be from negative 1 to 6, both parentheses.